For my second interview, I interviewed the parents of a 12-year-old boy named Tyler who has autism and ADHD. So when he was 3.5, his preschool teacher started noticing unusual behaviors and addressed it to his mom. And his mom was like, oh no, he's just really smart. And she's like, no, these are really unusual behaviors. And she was like, for example, I just wanted to test out to see how he would react to a xylophone. And he played with it for 2 hours, which his mom believed was a good thing, and that he was musically talented. Whereas the preschool teacher was like, no other student would ever play with a toy for 2 straight hours. So they started noticing different behaviors, and the teacher recommended for him to get tested. So the school tested him, but the school system can't medically diagnose a child. So he also went to his developmental doctor, where he was diagnosed with autism at around the age 4. And his parents had a really hard time grasping it at first, because everything the teacher brought up, she was like, the mom was expressed how, oh, it's just because he's so musically talented, and oh, I think he has a perfect pitch, and he's so intelligent. I'm not really sure how these are connected. And you're going out the profiles when you get tested, and you have to fill out a lot of paperwork. The questions that, or the different qualifications for autism, the parents it was really eye-opening, because they started identifying, oh wait, I have that. Oh wait, I have this. Oh wait, I have sensitivity to food. Oh, I cannot make eye contact. So the parents both started connecting, oh, I have these traits. He has these traits. And now Tyler's dad identifies that he has autism. Through this process, he was even able to find out that he has autism, because he was never tested as a child, and he just thought, oh, I'm a little quirky. Oh, I'm a little weird. So he actually found out that he is also autistic. So this was a very eye-opening experience, and through this process, the parents learned so much. At around the age of like 4 or 5, once he started to get older, he was taking piano lessons, and they realized that he has a perfect pitch. And he had one piano teacher that praised him for everything he did and believed that he was so amazing, and he would take a bow after every single piece he played. Then later he got a new piano teacher where she was a little bit more strict, and I remember the mom telling me that he would take a bow after his pieces, just like he did in front of the old piano teacher, and she'd be like, why are you bowing? You messed up. This is not correct. And he's like, every time I turn my head over, I can regain focus. And as a young kid, he was able to articulate these feelings so clearly that his mom was just so impressed. And so through this experience, they learned that he was able, whenever he turns his head upside down, or he stands on his head, or he bends over backward on the couch, that he's able to calm down and actually regain focus, which is a part of autism. And he also really finds calmness and relaxation in pressure, such as like squeezes and hugs, which he goes to physical therapists, and they have helped him identify this. So being a parent of an autistic child, you go through a lot of new learning experiences, and you learn so much about your child in a whole different light. And once he started getting older and going to school, since he was identified and classified as autistic at such a young age, he was put into the special education program very young. So now that he's older and he's 12 years old, he is very aware of what autism is. And one of the main things his mom preaches and encourages is to always tell others of your autism, because he has such a good skill and an unusual skill of being able to articulate himself really well. So he continues to talk about it, whether it's in front of his classmates, his Boy Scout troop, and she believes that this is a really big part for his success and for him to be accepted by others, because a lot of the time when you don't have a physical disabilities, it's really hard for others to accept and understand your mental disability. And so Tyler has carried this with him throughout his education, and right now he's doing really well. And yeah, I feel fortunate to be able to interview him and his parents.
Okay, so the second person I interviewed was a first grade teacher who's had experience with two autistic children. She said the biggest challenges were teaching them how to read, and having structure in the classroom, knowing their boundaries was huge for them to learn. Also, adhering to their own specific needs as an autistic student. So trying to make sure she helped both kids with their individual needs and not just trying to generalize it. So another thing was that if they didn't finish one task, it was really hard for them to move on to the next one, and it would just bug them a lot if they had to try and force themselves to do something else. And so she would try not to change a lot of things that were out of routine. And also she said that they got a lot more out of what she said than what it seemed like they did, because they wouldn't always make eye contact, but a lot of times they would still understand and hear what the teacher was saying. But yeah, the best setting for them was just a least restrictive setting for their learning needs. And so a lot of the parents only wanted mainstream and inclusive classrooms, but so they had to fight to get them aids, at least for the severe student they did. So yeah, she also made sure that they had the ability to move around and get up when they wanted to, and she would also keep track of how often they needed decompression or had meltdowns, and also how much they moved around. So her first experience with a autistic student, she had severe autism, and so she needed a one-on-one aid, and she flapped her hands. It was really difficult for her to sit. She was really fidgety, and so she had to sit in the back of the classroom so that she could get up and walk around without being a distraction. The teacher had positive reinforcement. She had a reward system for her, so through stickers and different things like that. And so, yeah, that was really helpful. Also, when the student had meltdowns, the aide would always help her to calm down and kind of take her to wherever she needed just to talk her through things. She had very limited language, but by the end of the year, she could formulate sentences with 5 words. And the teacher also used picture cards. So, for example, 5 minutes before lunch, she would always go to her desk and show her 5 fingers and then point to a card that had a picture of lunch in it. So just the routine of these things were really helpful for her. So then the second student, he didn't have an aid. He was really high functioning. He had amazing language and vocab. He could recall lessons and perfectly almost. And he had really good reading comprehension. But he also had bad grammar, and so they had to work through that a lot. He paced a lot and walked in circles, and the only thing that bugged the other students sometimes was that he would talk really, really loud or sing super loud randomly, and so that could sometimes be a distraction. But she would make visual tools to help him. So she made a visual thermometer with different colors, and whenever he was too loud, she would put it all the way up and kind of move it down so that he would know to be more quiet. And she didn't use a lot of complicated words to discipline him. She just said things very simply. He was the only one to initiate physical touch. He was a very loving student of hers. he had a lot of trouble with transition when there was no repetition, but she also had a reward system for him. So she would let him play on the computer or play with certain toys. And his behavior improved drastically by the end of the year. So she eventually didn't have to use the prizes anymore because he got used to it and was really obedient, I guess. He was really independent and kind of wanted to figure things out on his own, didn't like directions very much. And it took him a long time to trust her. But by the end of the year, he had a bunch of friends and was always at the same level academically as the other students, but he was able to do the same things at the same time. And she held him actually in first grade for 2 years. So he's currently in second grade and he barely even goes to resource anymore because she said he's improved so much, especially from her class and from making the decision to hold him back. And it was really rewarding to see his growth. So, yeah.
So for my second interview, I interviewed my aunt, Therese Adams. She is a mother of 2, one of which is 5 and the other is 3. My cousin Walker, who is 5 years old, was recently diagnosed for being on the spectrum, in specific Asperger's. Symptoms that his parents saw early on were behavioral issues, high intelligence, outbursts, sometimes that were violent, unusual reactions over the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. Specific things had to be orderly and not changed. For example, his food that he was given on a plate could not touch each other or else he would not eat it. He didn't like anything to be mixed in or mixed around with any sauce or anything, just very plain. After being tested, various changes and modifications as well as implements were made between parents, Walker, and their 3-year-old little brother. He had trouble building relationships with the other children around him in daycare. They were constantly getting calls from the school that he would lash out, become violent when something was upsetting him, or getting too excited. When he moved on to kindergarten at a younger age than most students, he had a much better time because he was around students who were more advanced, which really helped him mature and get into a different routine than he was used to at the daycare. He was extremely intellectual for his age, enjoyed reading for hours on end. He had trouble falling asleep at nighttime, so his parents decided instead of giving him a bedtime, they would just give him a book before bed, and that's how he would fall asleep. That also helped with him throwing tantrums or causing any issues for bedtime. He enjoys time to himself reading, watching advanced learning programs, and building things. He still has few friends in his grade level. They think this is because he's more advanced than the children of his age group and is slightly shy and awkward in interactive settings.
Between all of our interviews, we have concluded that there's a lot of similarities between the solutions that teachers and parents use to create an accepting environment within the classroom. Some of the recommendations are to give credit where credit is due. Even for effort, it's really good to reinforce that their effort and how hard they're working. Another obvious solution is to always teach kindness, to encourage support to all students, and always be nice. No matter what the class is or the grade, teachers should always teach this to their students.
Another thing was working in small groups. We all saw that the teachers use that tactic.
And a huge thing is letting the student, adhering to the specific student's needs and not generalizing what every student would need. It's figuring out what each student works best with. And so trying to be really patient and allowing them to work at their own pace, even if they're falling behind in like activities and not caught up with the rest of the students, knowing that they're still getting the things done that they need to, even if it's a really slow pace, that they're still learning. So yeah.